Hello and welcome to another episode of Industry Celebrities. My name is Kimberly Scott. Industry Celebrities is a podcast where I interview industry professionals in any industry and ask them questions about their industry or passion. Plus, they share a little advice to their younger self. If you want to tune into other episodes and or be a guest on Industry Celebrities, you can go to thatkimberly.com to either sign up to be interviewed and or decide which platform you wish to listen to the podcast on: iTunes, Spotify, Google, YouTube, and so on. So now I would like to welcome today's guest, Lee Novak, co-founder of Growth Visions. Hello, Lee, and did I say that correctly?
You were flawless, and thanks for having me on your show.
Well, thank you. Lee, please tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and the industry that you're in.
Certainly. Hopefully your listeners won't fall asleep. This will probably be the most boring thing they've heard. But I got into sales probably 25 years ago, or almost 30, I'm sorry, with a company called ADP Dealer Services. They're a publicly traded company based out of Schaumburg, Illinois.
Mm-hmm. I think I know who ADP is, I believe.
Yeah, so it's got a good name, and that certainly helped me early in my career as I was sort of stumbling around. Being able to mention that great company's name was always an opportunity for the customer to give me 2 more minutes. So that was my favor. And I moved progressively up through ADP. I was there over 20 years. My last position with them was executive director of sales for their major markets, where that handled most of the large accounts. During my time at the organization, and even prior, I began to see a need for salespeople to understand that selling at any risk is not the right way. What I mean by that is if you risk your reputation, if you risk your integrity, if you risk your character and your name, that's really not selling. And I think many salespeople struggle with that today, where they're at a barbecue and they tell someone something and they're in a positional argument, and the person says, well, you're in sales, you'll say anything to your point.
Yeah, that just makes my skin crawl when people say that, but because
that is
not, I'm in sales and that's not me, but yes.
Yeah, it's something that all of us that have been in sales have had to carry with us as a burden. And what I really wanted to do when I became a manager, I think it was in '96, was I wanted to change that paradigm, if you will, to one that put the people first, people being the individuals that reported to me on my team and the customer. And I felt like if we built everything around that, every action, every part of the sales process, every part of the relationship, as opposed to the sales number, where you are at with quota, that we long-term would have a more legacy success, which thankfully it was proven correct. Our team got me a lot of awards and a lot of accolades because of their efforts. More importantly, 9 of those individuals were ultimately promoted, and that's probably more exciting to me than even closing the deal, seeing other people win and progress in their goals.
That's awesome that you said that you gave the credit to them in your statement right now, that because they succeeded and did so well, it made you look good and succeed as well. So
absolutely.
So from ADP, how did you find your way to Growth Vision?
I had a short stint with a competitor that was starting a new group called Dealer Track. I was with them for about 6 years, and I helped them to start their major accounts group, which was called Strategic. And it was during that time that my best friend since high school, who is also an author, his name is John Ryan. He's really a guru on the marketing side of business. And my focus has always been on culture, sales, and leadership. And we had been discussing for a number of years of doing a business together where we could go in and help organizations to change their culture, and at the same time be more profitable, more effective, and more efficient. And so when Dealer Track was sold to Cox Media, Cox Dealer Services, it allowed us the opportunity to do just that. And so we founded the company about 3 years ago with the emphasis in the areas that I've already mentioned.
Well, that's exciting. Congratulations for
Thank you.
Taking the leap into starting your own business and, moving forward, because it's half the battle just to take the jump and then the other half of the battle to continue to stay out there,
Right.
work in the business.
When you have your own business, as you know as well, for the longest time, you may have been in a different role and you see things from a high level. You're right about a lot of that. But then when you get on the other side of the desk, you then see a lot of the advice that you may have given. You really didn't have the depth and the breadth of knowledge. So once you step on the other side of that desk and you become an entrepreneurial individual, it changes how you advise and how you counsel and coach others.
Absolutely. And you also work 10 times harder for yourself than you do anyone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what do you enjoy most about this new venture that you all started 3 years ago?
I think, honestly, it's not that much different from what my purpose was with ADP and even DealerTrack. And that is, I love to see people grow. I love to help people. And I don't mean that in a sense of, being Mother Teresa. I mean, in terms of helping individuals, if they're employees, to be happier, to be more successful, not just professionally, but also personally. Being able to see an individual that maybe had a house in New Mexico, had no kids, and then through a 3 or 4 year period was able to acclimate himself to sales. He had a couple of kids. Before you know it, it's 10 years down the road. Now he's looking to buy his second house, and he's doing real estate while he's working with us. That to me is very gratifying to see that growth. Because if we only measure a salesperson by how much they've sold, what you end up with is a very up and down cyclical sort of attitude and happiness. Because if we're as leaders telling people, you're great because you sold a bunch last quarter, you had a great year, and then we sort of ignore them, or we start to get harder on them as managers because their sales are down, then the question comes back is what is really important to the leader? And the leader is going to set that tone for what's important. And probably the short portion of this, sorry I got a little long-winded, but that salesperson, how are they going to treat the customer? If you're treating them as their only value is based on how much they've sold,
yeah,
they're going to treat a potential prospect that says, hey, look, I'm in the market, but you're going to have to wait 4 months. The most likely answer is they're going to give up on that particular prospect because you're not rewarding them for the process and the hard work. You're only rewarding them for the results.
Yeah. So basically, they will no longer be they're only good as their last sale. They're going to be continually nurtured, developed, guided, so that sale just comes second.
Yes, and what we have always said to the companies we work with, and I would tell my team every year was, your value to me as a person has absolutely nothing to do with how much you sold. Your value to me as a person is how you did the job. Are you making progress in your skill sets? Are you selling with integrity? You have high character? Are you a good teammate? And I had to walk that too, because sometimes salespeople struggle.
Yeah.
And it was obviously sometimes the easy road would have been to say, well, I'm going to let this person go because corporate is telling me that we've got to get our number up. But in the end, 100% of the time, by motivating and inspiring those individuals, giving them the support where they need it. And yes, sometimes having to give them a hard message. Our turnover was very, very small in the teams that we managed. And that's what we work with companies, is to help to get their retention for their employees at a respectable level.
Well, I definitely know that's needed especially the corporate world. I know no matter how big or small the company is, especially if they're selling a service or a product, ethical sales, and the way that they treat their counterparts is very much needed, no matter what business it is. So congratulations to you, because I'm already thinking of 2 people off the top of my head I can connect you with.
Great.
My standing question for this podcast is, what would you tell your younger self?
I think what I would tell my younger self is no one is as bad as the worst thing they've done. And what I mean by that is, I'm not talking, although it can be in this category, if you had somebody that had a criminal mistake that they made in their life, that's still not who they really are 10 years down the road. But what this is really applying to is when you lose a sale, when you lose a deal, when you lose out on a bonus or an award, you can't let that get into you to say, I'm not any good, I'm bad, I'm going to go find another career. You have to tell yourself, I'm not as bad as the worst year that I had. I'm not as bad as the worst circumstance that I've been through. And I find in my own personal life when I was younger, that was difficult for me because I had a tendency to think I'm not good enough. And in some ways that was good because that's what drove me.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an unhealthy version of that, that if I had been able to tell myself that no one is as bad as the worst thing they've done, and neither am I think I could have dusted my pants off a lot easier and focused on the goal that was in front of me instead of the situations that were behind me.
Mm-hmm. To learn from those and move on.
Yes.
And almost kind of in a roundabout way, because it's something that I was taught a long time ago, that no one needs to beat anyone up. They're already beating themselves up enough. Like, when someone messes up, for instance, instead of pounding them about how they messed up, more than likely they're already in their head talking about how they messed up to themselves and critiquing, and we're all our worst critics. So maybe more so focusing on what can be done better, or all the good things they did, even though they might have messed up.
And I think the second thing, and I know you only asked for one, but the second thing that I wish that I had realized when I was younger is that people really are the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take care of the people, the money and the achievements and the growth, it's going to come. It's going to
Yes.
follow. And I found myself early in my sales career when we were in the process of selling highly technical technology, software and hardware at that time, that I was always focused on how much I knew about the product. I was always focused on how do I get this sale. But as I matured and as I progressed, what I realized is that I needed to be focusing on the person in front of me. That could be a president, it could be a general manager, or it could be just a department manager. But by focusing on the people and what their goals were, it didn't matter how much I knew or didn't know. We had resources to find the answers to technical questions.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a manager, for example, and you see on the back of his or her desk that they've got 3 kids in sports, and they've already told you, gosh, I'm having to work 16 hours a day. Your strategy should be, if it's about the people, your strategy shouldn't be about the product and how it works. It should be, what can my product do
To help you?
Individual have a better quality life. And that's the one thing I wish I had told myself earlier, because I know that I lost deals. I know that early in my career, I probably not only lost professional, but personal respect from people, because I was that guy that was so focused on just the sale.
Mm-hmm.
And that was 2 things I think I would tell myself.
Well, that's definitely things that I know I didn't tell myself, but learned over the years. So great advice to your younger self, and to really anybody out there just starting out in sales. If they do those things, focus on the people and not focusing on what they did. No one is as bad as the worst thing they've done.
Right. Right.
That will definitely get them moving ahead, moving forward.
Well, I find too, even in the companies that we work with, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, that if you used a car as an analogy of their career or their vision, oftentimes they're very focused on looking forward through that windshield. Many times they spend more time looking in the rearview mirror about things that didn't work, about that boss that they had that just ruined them, that hurt their earnings, their attitude, their possibility of promotion. But right there in the seat beside them is the opportunity to do better, the opportunity to grow, the opportunity to correct that mistake and help them to get to that goal. But it's interesting, we're all guilty at different times of being so focused on the things in front of us, and maybe even more so the things that happen behind us, that it takes us out of the need to really be focusing on the things beside us.
Being present. Being present.
Being present. You're right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing the advice you would give your younger self. I really appreciate that. Lee, why don't you tell my listeners how they can get a hold of you or connect with you?
Sure. I can be reached directly via my email, which is lwnovak@growthvisions.com. I've got a direct line that they can call me on. It's 832-567-8512. Again, 832-567-8512. I'm also on LinkedIn, also on Twitter. I can be reached through Coach Novak.
On Twitter. Coach Novak on Twitter.
Coach Novak on Twitter.
Got it. Well, thank you, Lee, again for your time today. And everyone listening, remember to hit the subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, Anchor, or just go ahead and follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Instagram, all those great places. And until next week, stay positive and keep growing. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Kimberly. God bless.